I wish to speak to you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. So in today's opening collect, we affirm that God built God's church upon the foundation of the apostles and the prophets, making Jesus Christ the chief cornerstone. The early followers of Jesus were called the Way. Not unlike the discord that exists in our 21st century, Paul tells us in today's epistle reading that there was trouble brewing in Galatia with the Way. In Galatia, the problem was that Jesus' followers were not all Jewish. They were Jews, Greeks, slaves, and free. When the Gentiles were living and worshiping together with the Jews in this new way of doing things, the Jewish people believed circumcision was an absolute necessity to please God. Circumcision for the Jews was a major factor in their identity. It was what set them apart from everyone else. The Gentiles weren't converting to Judaism. They were becoming Christians. They didn't see why they needed to adapt to Jewish law to put on Christ. Paul was of that same mindset. In today's world, as witnessed this past week, we Christians cannot agree on issues relating to curbing gun violence and matters that pertain to Roe versus Wade, that which was the law of the land for 50 years, up until last Friday. Now, we don't know for certain what Jesus would say today or how Jesus would handle these issues. We do know that when Jesus was walking this earth, he didn't care what a person's background was, what people looked like on the outside. That didn't matter either. These technicalities, though, were dividing the church in Galatia, much the same way that these issues from this week are challenging people of faith who cannot agree on what pleases God. What Paul does tell us, and that which we must keep in the forefront as Christians, is that Jesus said to the people of Galatia, the whole law is summed up in a single commandment. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Paul tells the followers of Jesus to love the neighbors as themselves. And then he spells out the fruit of the Spirit, which is with us at all times. He tells us that we need to recognize that Spirit rather than following our own desires. Paul says, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And if we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. Paul's letter to the people of Galatia reminds them who they belong to and what it means to be followers of Jesus. Life is changed for them. People who never got along are now meant to do so. Paul is telling them to make room in their hearts for everyone. Circumcision doesn't matter. The ways particular to one group or another do not matter. Tell that to the people who are on either side of last week's Supreme Court decisions. As we all know, it's easy to love those like us, and much more difficult to follow Jesus' command to love everyone. Jesus, though, has told us where to set our sights. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Now, one can imagine that this was a difficult message for the people of Galatia to hear, especially the Jewish people who were holding fast to their belief about circumcision. With the uncertainties that the recent Supreme Court decisions have brought to our nation, This morning, it's likely that many of us here are finding it difficult to fully appreciate loving our neighbors with whom we may disagree. What do we need to find in our hearts to change or to remedy to live as followers of Jesus today? To practice the way of love, that is, the way of Jesus. Turning to the Gospel of Luke today, we're given a deeper understanding of what Jesus expected of his followers. The disciples with Jesus have been following him for a while. They've heard Jesus teach in the synagogue. They've seen Jesus heal people. They've seen Jesus deliver people from demons. They had seen him with tax collectors and prostitutes. Jesus demonstrated for them that a person's background, who they were, or who they loved, did not matter to Jesus. All were welcome. In Luke's gospel, Jesus is headed toward Jerusalem. The journey from Galilee to Jerusalem is the story of Jesus being transformed from a prophet to our Messiah. Jesus knows the fate that's awaiting him in Jerusalem, and yet he begins that journey with no hesitation. No procrastination from Jesus. And furthermore, Jesus invites the followers along. Those who went with him found their deepest selves in that journey. This journey and the strange route which they took will be the storyline of Jesus that we will be following over the next several weeks. Today, though, let's focus on the 3 unnamed people who said they wanted to follow Jesus. Each of the 3 had something to do before they went with Jesus. Now, we might very easily find ourselves in any of those 3 people. They were distracted by possessions, duties, social conventions, just as the Jews and Greeks and Gentiles were distracted by jealousies and the need to do things in the old way. They had something to do, so they said, "I'll follow you, but." With Jesus, there is no but. It's a total commitment. When there's a but in a sentence, we are saying, "Not now. I have something else. I have something better to do." Now, we too can be distracted by our comfort and stability. And Jesus says to us, "No, leave the distraction behind. Leave everything." He invites us to a life of radical inclusion. The question we must ask ourselves is whether we really want to let go in order to commit to this new way of living, to serve others before we serve ourselves. This journey that Jesus led the disciples on was how Jesus taught the disciples the truth about loving their neighbor as themselves. As they were walking along with Jesus, the disciples were learning the cost of being followers of the way. There's a cost for us as well. Being a follower of Jesus, adhering to Jesus' commandment that we love one another, requires that we reconsider how we live our lives and what God is asking of us. It means putting Jesus first in our lives, learning to let Jesus be the foundation of who we are and what we do, most especially that part that involves loving our neighbors as ourselves.